It's still the 11th day of July, Wednesday. Eric sent me that video that he was talking about at the last half, or towards the close of the first hour. And joining us now, we have Woody O'Brien and Doug Newberry. Now, these guys are both, we're going to talk about the economy, what's going on in our markets and what's going on in Europe. But I want to play this video. It's 3 minutes long, and I'm going to let this drive the conversation for the first half of the program. So, guys, hang tight for a second here and just listen in, because I think you're going to find this interesting. The title of it is the most honest 3.5 minutes on television ever. And there was one point in my life I don't believe that was a George Carlin skit that I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with. But listen.
It's funny. I just watched that video this morning.
Did you? Okay. Well, I'm going to play it real quick, and then we'll get into it. Here we go.
Is the greatest country in the world.
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis? Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way. Well, why is it not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer. You're saying yes. Let's talk about, fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of her paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it any time he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey, and with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom. All right. And yet you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured disease, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore. Enough?
Country in the world.
At any rate, that's a man. I tell you what, that's the second time I've seen it. Now, Doug, I think you said you saw it this morning. Is that right?
Yep.
What do you go ahead? What do you think? I mean, is this? He brings the stats of where we rank poorly, and I mean that's a fact. We talked about this on the program before. The only thing we're really good at is incarcerating our citizens and waging war. I mean, is it not 100% true that when we have these politicians stand before us, you know, they're always talking about the greatest nation on earth, the shining example, the shining city on the hill. Those days are gone. They're gone. We've turned into this tyrannical spreader of empire around the world, and we're building enemies at every turn, and we're borrowing, you know, half of the money that we spend in order to do this. We've truly lost our edge in the world, and we've truly lost the respect of the world. And isn't it time just to wake up and realize this fact?
Well, I will tell you that while much of what he cites in the video is true, let me tell you, there was a time that America was not only the greatest country in the world, but the greatest country in the history of the world, and I'll tell you why. The reason why is because when our founding fathers sat down and wrote the Declaration of Independence, they set the template for how people escape tyranny in humanity on this planet. And there are 76 new nations on the face of the earth today who used that Declaration of Independence as a template to free themselves from their own oppressors. Now, we did build the greatest economy in the world. We did make the greatest innovations in the world. We did have the greatest healthcare breakthroughs in the history of the world. I will tell you this, though. We are a nation in those days are not yet gone, but they're going. We're a nation that's been hijacked by a corrupt media, corrupt politicians, corrupt bankers, corrupt agribusiness, corrupt pharmaceuticals, corrupt healthcare. Every major industry out there is destroying what it was they were set out to help. And if we don't get control of it soon, I will tell you this, those days are gone.
Yeah, Woody, let me get you in on this. I mean,
the first thing I would say is I'm 53 years old. I was born in 1959, and there's not a day that passes that I don't say this is not the country I grew up in anymore.
Right.
And I think that's the frustration is for people who are a little bit older. We remember how it used to be, and I would give you there's a date that this country forever changed. It's August 15th, 1971, because that was the day that the era of fraud began, where our money system wasn't connected to anything. We did all those great things that Doug said, but I would argue we didn't just do them because we were a great people and we were an honest people, unlike today where the number one industry in America is fraud. We did it because we had a sound system. We had sound money. We didn't have the slavery of debt-based fiat currency, and we didn't have this corrupt Ponzi scheme called the Federal Reserve. And I make the case all the time that unless you're going to get rid of the tyranny of central banks and a debt-based money system, it doesn't matter what else you're going to do because everything is connected to money. And without a sound money, it's like saying you can build a house without a sound house, without a sound foundation. It can't be done.
No, I
agree with Woody, and I'll tell you this. There were several dates where America lost its way. One was created the Federal Reserve. One was when Nixon took us off the gold standard, like Woody suggested. Another one was when we passed the 17th Amendment to the Constitution, where the states no longer had representation in the federal government. I mean, there have been turning points in our history that have led us to the a technological tyranny that we live in today. And I lay the blame for this right squarely at the feet of the media, Charlie excluded, because, dude, they should have woke people up when this was happening. They have been corrupted to the core. The first step to reclaiming the freedom of this country is busting up the big media conglomerations and getting more people like Charlie on the air and Woody on the air who are going to tell people the truth. And we need to re-educate the American citizens because I'm not kidding you. They are still, the word is asleep, but it is asleep. I mean, they think that this American dream, you've got to be asleep to believe it. Because if you're awake and you look around, Woody's absolutely correct. And I say it all the time. This is not the country that I grew up in. And more importantly, the future ain't what it used to be.
That's exactly right. Woody, I'm 10 years younger than you. Doug, I just from your picture, I'm assuming we're about the same age. And Eric Lovely, who's sitting in the wings just listening to the program, him and I are close to the same age. And, even at 40 years old, I've seen this country deteriorate. You could be 20 years old. right? And you can see the change that has occurred over the last just 20 years alone. And I think it's, the media, the Federal Reserve, the fact is, you're right, Doug. In 1980, we had 50 companies controlling 80% of the news. Now, which is a shockingly small number, shockingly small that 50 companies, corporations, can control that much media. But we look at it today, and it's 5 or 6 global conglomerates control 80 to 90% of all information.
Which is why you saw the report come out just this week. I'm sure you saw it. The television news has the lowest credibility rating it's ever had.
I didn't see that, and I'm going to tell you why I didn't see that. Because you're talking about the average person in this country who still believes in this American dream, if they do, it's a direct result of the propaganda engine that is corporate media, because it isn't by reality. I spent the last and I said this in the first hour. I spent the last 3 days in Nova Scotia, and it's amazing to me the awareness difference of the nation living to the north of us about the policies that are happening in this country. They're just in a general sampling of talking to the folks up there over a beer. They're more aware of what's happening inside our government than most people I run into here.
Well, I'm sure you've noticed the news. Like, I've watched the same news story across several networks. And if you watch RT or Al Jazeera English or the BBC or Fox News or CNN, you could get 5 different versions of the same exact event depending on the agenda behind the people who are management of the station. It's unbelievable to me.
Well, it is unbelievable, but I'm going to make a kind of a so what point is that these mainstream media outlets really only matter if you're expecting to save this country by political change. And I think anybody who thinks that we're going to turn this around by political change is the most wild optimist you'll ever meet in your life. The fact is that every metric or every revolution of the past 1,000 years has a single metric. And that metric is it only involves 1 to 5% of the population who are true believers in something, whether it's bringing communism into Russia or bringing freedom into America in the 1770s and the colonies. There were 1 million Americans in the 1770s, and 600,000 of them supported the king. But the only votes that counted were the 15,000 at Valley Forge. I think if you look at the revolutions we've had in Egypt and Tunisia and some of these other places, when you see Trafalgar Square full of human beings, it's not 30% of the Egyptian population. It's 1 or 2%, but they're the only 1 or 2% that matters. As far as the people who watch Fox News or watch ABC News and don't have a clue that's going on, I would say they're going to be exactly the kind of people with every revolution in the past 1,000 years. They're going to be watching as somebody else does the heavy lifting. Because I think this country is not going to change by a political process. It's going to change by a revolution that follows collapse.
I'm going to bring Eric in because he touches on these subjects too, and he was just sitting back listening. But I think he's got some comments he wants to deliver on this as well. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I'll try to make it.
First of all, let me introduce you. We got Woody O'Brien and Doug Newberry. They're new guests to the program, but welcome guests.
Well, welcome aboard, gentlemen. It's definitely nice to have you and hear your thoughts and ideas. I have to agree with both of the people that or everybody that's involved and made the statements on it, but I have to disagree at the same time. You see, the Abraham Lincoln and the 13th Amendment, okay, what you're watching here, let's make a boxing analogy. If you've ever been knocked out or knocked down in a real physical fight, the moment you get hit with that all summoning blow, which sends you to the mat, for you, time slows way down. The pain ripples across your body. Then you get muscle fatigue that instantly sets in. You have all these little problems that start to accrue in a very short period of time. But for you, it seems like a really long period of time. Well, what it is we're the fighter. We are the boxer. And Abraham Lincoln and company, with the 13th through the 17th Amendment and so forth, when they rolled in, they hit us. And instead of catching our breath, instead of catching our footing and taking the fight to them, we buckled. And everything between then and now is just the time period between you falling and hitting the mat. That's all this is. America is long since gone. They have taken the time to whittle away each and every aspect, socially, intellectually. You know, the man in the video hits it on the head. When you have someone with passion who comes out with fire and brimstone in his voice and in his ideas, they're shunned, they're belittled, intelligence has been thrown along the wayside, and that is the majority. If people don't understand that they need to look at what the colleges and the high schools produce and the mindset that they have, people like us, we have a very small gathering, and that's really, I agree, what it's going to take. It's going to take a small percentage, because most of the people of America are fast and fastened to this Leviathan. And all the dreams of America have just slowly washed away from us, and been turned into nothing more than you're right, and turned into nothing more than a pop culture slogan. I want to get Doug in here before the break, because you know, both of you have now said, Eric and Woody, that it's this small minority that affects revolution. And I want to get Doug in here because I had Doug and Don Harold on at one point where we talked about, you know, that as long as there's an electricity's on, the TV's on, and beer in the fridge, nothing's changing. People are just going to sit here and go through this. Doug, do you see a 1%, a 2% standing up and saying, you know, we're taking our country back, or are you more jaded, kind of like I am, where I see an age where we have a build out of the security industrial complex that's going to handle any 1 or 2% of the people standing up, no problem. Try to travel across the country. Try to travel by aircraft, or even now by driving on the interstate system. And even in your own town, you might have a drone watching you. Doug, do you see a small minority standing up and affecting any kind of revolutionary change?
Well, I will tell you this. You know, they say one man can't change the world, but I will tell you that indeed one man is the only thing that's ever changed the world. Someone starts an idea, other people go along, and that's how change happens. Now, whether or not we end up living in a tyranny of a technological, you know, dictatorship where, did you guys see the news that just broke today about this new laser scanner that DHS is building?
You can see if you're you can see if your levels from 150 feet away.
Right. We already live in a technological prison state. All right. That's just the way it is. They control the communications. They control everything. And I say they, you know who they are. They're the ones imposing tyranny. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, right?
Yes.
And it's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it, because we could indeed do to ourselves the tyranny of stupidity. Right? Like in Idiocracy, everything has advertising on it. Of course, they're watering their crops with Gatorade or whatever it's called, Brondo, right? I mean, the people are just so rock stupid that they can be led around by the nose. I mean, the guy gets his law degree at Costco, right? I mean, it's just classic. We are so headed in that direction if we don't do something. And I will tell you this. We have a shot right now, while there's sufficient old people on the planet who still remember what freedom was like, you know? Yeah. Because, you know, think about this, 30 years from now, when all those folks who remember the Great Depression are dead and, you know, all that stuff, the pre-World War II folks, wait till the bulk of society is post-9/11 children, right? You are going to be in a whole world of hurt if we don't get control of the situation.
Yeah, and so we already have a generation. Matter of fact, I just put up a video talking about the bloodlust of our so-called representatives. We have a whole entire generation now that has grown up in this empire war machine mentality. You know, the generation, the kids that were born in 2001. You know, these they're almost military service age, and they've never seen anything but this nation at war, spreading some kind of notion of democracy. Woody, I agree with you on this point wholeheartedly. Collapse is coming, and there's going to be change out of collapse. I don't... Go ahead.
There has to be, because we're a nation that can't even feed itself. People don't realize cities are consumers of resources that come from other places. And if you live in a city with millions of other people in a place where water doesn't come out of the ground and food doesn't grow, in an economic collapse situation, you're even in worse shape if you're prepared, because people will kill you for what it is that you have. In a collapse scenario, the government is going to be able to weaponize food to get people to do what they want in order to eat, to die another day.
Yeah.
Where you get out further.
Hold that thought. I'm going to kick it to you when we come back to continue that thought and keep this conversation going. I'm going to try to make sure everybody gets equal amount of talk. I want to talk about collapse scenario and how this could unfold. I mean, last time we were on, we were talking about Europe. It's back, bigger, badder, uglier than ever. We're going to pick up on that thread after the break. So stay tuned, guys. We have about 70 or so in the chat room. If you want to post your questions in there now for the panel, go ahead and. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. I am Charlie McGrath, your host. We have a great panel: Eric Lovely, Woody O'Brien, and Doug Newberry. We critiqued the greatest 3 minutes, or the most honest 3 minutes video, and that obviously led into where we're heading as a nation. Are we going to wake up? Are we going to? Is there going to be a revolution? Is there going to be an awakening? I'm very jaded on the notion that this is going to occur. I kind of in the camp of, after especially 4 years of doing YouTube videos, 2 years of doing the program, seeing the expansion of the security industrial complex just in that 4 years, double, quadruple in size, seeing the bailout phenomenon continue, seeing the takeover of, or the suspension of free market capitalism to save it, the takeover of the government by special corporate interests, the Federal Reserve expanding its power, and after the worst collapse since the Great Depression, not having simple things such as Glass-Steagall, but yet we get these onerous pieces of legislation like Dodd-Frank that don't do anything except secure the too big to fail as being complete and total economies, not systemic anymore. They are the economy. So I'm more apt to think that we're going to see technology being used as a tool of tyranny against the people of this country. We already see it, but this is going to continue.
But Charlie, why do we think that technology is some unlimited fix-all for the imperial state that wants to use it? If they have 50,000 people in the federal government who are all day long looking at Facebook pages and YouTube videos, well, there's 700 million Facebook pages, and there's probably 1 billion videos. Maybe they'll get to me once every 100 years. No. That's
not accurate. That's not accurate. Look it. You go on your show tomorrow, and I'll give you 10 words. If you say these 10 words, you are going to have a flag by your name. This isn't an individual. This is an algorithm. You know. That's right. You talk about
that. I understand.
Yeah, they're not outsourcing this junk to the Philippines, man. This is software.
But again, if everybody who's ever said "Assalamu alaikum" on the air, or something, if they have a list of 100,000 people that have said that, again, so what? Right. The truth is, I think this technology, and if this was a war and the internet was the battlefield, I think that people are winning, because there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and this is one of those cases where, in my view, the people are too big to fail, because the inefficiency of any government operation. Milton Friedman once said that if you put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years you'd have a sand shortage. The problem is even though you have all this technology, which basically screens down to targets, I don't know about you, but if I'm not on a list already now, I would be really disappointed, because I haven't really been that effective if they don't know who the hell I am by now. So, to me, this idea, I think what the government is mostly afraid of is they're afraid of people who are networked in with thousands of other people.
Sure.
And the reason is, if they snatch me off the street, I'm not some loner someplace nobody's going to care. I have thousands of people I've worked for, and thousands of people who follow my work. They're going to be picking up the phone. They're going to be calling people. They're going to be making a stink if I get black bagged someplace.
Right.
The government is a coward, and it's always going to pick easy targets. So I think these people think, well, if you don't have a Facebook page, you're somehow safer. Or wrong. If you have a Facebook page and have 4,000 friends, you're probably much safer, because now they're afraid of you.
You make a good point, but in talking to technology, first of all, I don't think they're afraid to snap you up off. They prove this. They prove this almost on a daily basis now with executive orders or pieces of legislation that are worded. The verbiage in them is perfect to describe a lot of people that you just described, which is rabble rousers on the internet. So I think that they're putting the pieces into place for anybody who is a naysayer. We were talking during the break where it used to be cool to stand up against your government and speak out and stand up for your rights. Now it's the exact opposite. We have a generation that's grown up with this kill mentality. We have several generations that have been immersed in the propaganda machine of corporate-owned media, where they think it is the epitome of patriotism to strip down naked and get groped when you go through an airport, or to bow down and take everything that comes out of the mouth of the guy wearing the $10,000 suit on TV as gospel truth. That is patriotism. And so I do think that there is certainly a threat to people who are willing to go on the internet, or like you do on your radio program or your writings, both of you. You're here, so you're obviously a rabble rouser. I think there is a legitimate concern that we could just be gotten rid of. And you know what? I honestly think technology is not only being used to track, to locate, to find out who is the potential troublemakers. It is a massive, massive pacifier. And we've seen it being used as that for, we talked about the media control, 4 or 5, 6 companies that control all this media. Distraction, divide and conquer tactics. All this is done with this pacifier of the media.
Charlie, this is what I like to call the Alex Jones question, which is if the government was going to identify people who were dangerous rabble rousers and take them out, why isn't Alex Jones dead? And the reason is because he's now too big. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that they don't want to make a martyr out of him because they know it would spawn 100 more. This is a very, very dangerous thing. And I've talked to people who worked in Army intelligence for decades and say the government is always going to pick the easiest targets. And if you're a hard target, and you're living out in the country someplace, they're probably going to leave you alone. Yeah. I mean, look at recently, there was some prepper who they snuffed out in the Southwest, and it was some guy who was some loner who had a bunker out in the thing, and they made it look like he killed his family and then killed himself. Well, he wasn't really connected to anybody, so he was somebody they could easily kill and try and discredit people who were doing prepping. Well, you couldn't do that for someone who was rational and sane and had a following in that kind of area. The government is a criminal organization, and criminals are always cowards. If you have a hard target, they're going to go after a little old lady who can't fight back. And I think that the fact of the matter is that this is a subject that reminds me of a wonderful moment in my childhood. It wasn't wonderful when it happened. When I came around a corner in Glenolden, Pennsylvania, and noticed a German Shepherd that was brutally vicious, had broken his chain, and he was coming down the street toward me, and I was walking towards the street with him, and I realized if I turned and ran, that dog was going to chase me, and I was going to end up in the hospital. So instead, I ran towards the dog, screaming and flailing my arms, and when the dog realized I wasn't afraid, the dog ran. And to me, I think the government is correctly afraid of people like Doug Newberry and Charlie McGrath and Woody O'Brien. And the reason is that I think at the core of anybody who does this kind of stuff and who is a rabble rouser or has a name out there and is speaking out for liberty, I think there's a little bit of that Brad Pitt line in all of us. We're all going to die someday for something. Right. What difference does it make if it's now for something we believe in, or when we're 85 years old lying in bed dying of something? To me, there is a finality about this life. And to me, I think the most important thing that the people show these politicians is we are not afraid of you, but you should be very afraid of us, because there's way more of us than there are of you.
Doug, let's get you in on this. I mean, your take. I mean, is technology, is it the new end-all, beat-all tyrannical tool, or is it backfiring on this plan of subjugation?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, technological imprisonment or enslavement or whatever you want to call it is probably very, very effective because they have just such fantastic tools now. I mean, anybody that lives in a town with a circle freeway, is essentially closed in, right? I mean, they have ways of putting down rabble rousers. But at the same time, that stuff only goes so far. Because like Woody says, I mean, dude, they could have hundreds of thousands of troops and they're still enormously outmanned in a real revolution situation. So, it remains to be seen. And I'll tell you something, it's good to see so many people waking up. I mean, there was a time, and I don't know what it was that woke you guys up or what it was that made you an activist. I can tell you what it was for me, but everybody just needs that one thing. And for people who are interested in health and nutrition, you talk to them about genetically modified foods and the vaccines and stuff. If it's people that are into news media, you just point out the corruption in the news media to them. If it's war people, you can, military supporters, you can show them all the corruption in the military, the depleted uranium all over the Middle East. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever their interest is, that's how you can grab new people and wake them up, because it has to be something they care about,
right,
or else they won't think that it affects them.
That's a good point. And let me take this to our next topic, because I do believe there's something coming. Wait,
before we leave this, there's something I gotta say.
Do it.
I want people to think about this technology question in one simple way. Think about how many videos you've seen complaining and saying how horrible the Federal Reserve is versus how many the Federal Reserve has produced saying how great they are. Think about how many you've seen about chemtrails and how dangerous they are, or how dangerous food is, or how dangerous these executive orders are compared to the ones that support the government position.
Great point, Woody. However, I mean, that's
100,000 to 1.
It is 100,000, and that is an excellent point. But let's say it's 10 million to 1. Let's say it's 100 million to 1. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because we don't have a representative government that is going to listen to the will of the 100 million and affect any kind of change. But we do have the control.
We don't need one, okay? If 20 guys attack a tank, the tank is going to win. If 100 guys attack a tank, the tank is going to lose. There are way more of us than there are of them. And this idea that they're able to control the people through lies and manipulation in major media. These major media outlets, I just read an article the other day that CNN has its lowest ratings in history.
Yeah.
The eyeballs are all going in a million alternative media places. People they're becoming more and more irrelevant. They're the dinosaurs of the information.
And that is a fact. And even.
Well, hang on. Let me throw something out on that topic, because here's the sad part. It's worse than that, Woody. If the people who used to watch news, read newspapers and watch television news, were moving over to alternative news sources, I would be the happiest guy in the world, right? But they're not. They're tuning out and they're watching shit like Jersey Shores and, just 16 and pregnant and my big fat gypsy wedding, or,
I'm going to say, so what? Those are the ones that are going to sit and watch the revolution on TV.
I agree with Woody. I mean, I remember reading a study in 2010 that showed it finally fell to less than 50% of the people surveyed trusted mainstream media. So, and that was the first time that has ever occurred. And since then, that number has started to fall. So these people were news junkies before. These people who were sold out on Fox News because they were, gung-ho red state patriots, and that are waking up and realizing, the same lies about weapons of mass destruction or terrorists in these nations, or we have to go in and invade for these reasons that we keep recycling. When they wake up, when they start asking questions of the information that's being fed to them, they're not necessarily, going to Jersey Shore. They are looking for, in most cases, the people that truly wake up are the ones who don't even look for alternative media. They decide, the hell with this. I'm going to do my own, I'm going to get my own information. I'm going to do my own research, and I'm going to find out, I'm going to trust what I present to myself as information that is truthful, because I'm not going to come out with a biased point of view. I want to know what's being done in the name of myself and the name of the people of this country. We got about 6 minutes left, and I want to drag both of you because I know you follow what's going on with Europe and sovereign debt, and is this going to be the landmine that sets the world off the financial cliff? You know, but I'm going to leave it with this on the collapse deal, and it could come out of this European deal. I don't care if you're, you know, and we all know these people that don't care. They want to go, they want to punch the clock, they want to go home, they want to make sure they can run down to Schlotzsky's on the weekend, have a pizza and a beer, and everything else is, you know, more intelligent people than them. This is what they think. This is what they want you to think. Somebody smarter than you has it all under control. Sit back and relax, and everything will be fine. Even the most outrageous person that falls into that category is going to wake up one day. They're going to. There's no choice. There is going to be a sledgehammer of reality, and I've termed it the crisis of reality, is going to hit this country at some point. It could be tomorrow with a complete and utter credit globally stemming out of Europe. It could be 10 years down the road with a hot war with Russia or China or something like that. But reality is eventually going to land on everybody's doorstep. And, you know, that's why I believe it's important to have alternative media, people like you and myself out there who are speaking this over and over and over again and have been saying, you know, this is coming. You better understand the solution that's going to be offered isn't going to be the greatest country in the world solution. It's going to be, you know, enslavement of what freedom is left on this planet. So let me kick it to Doug first. Doug, Europe, what's going on? And I'm being real brief because we have about 4 minutes left. Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, it's just they have a fundamental problem in that they're trying to solve a debt problem with more debt, and it's just pathetic. And, you know, after 19 summits, and they bring these rumors out like they've got it all solved this time, it's laughable. Quite frankly, you know, they are in for one heck of a rude awakening here one of these days. And there's two forces at play here. There's market forces, which will tell you that every fiat currency in the history of the world has failed. And then there's central bank forces who can print as much money as they need to bail themselves out. One of those two forces is going to lose, and I suspect that it will be the central bankers, but they will not go down without the fight of all time.
Woody, give me your take.
Well, Doug's right. You can't drink yourself sober, and all they keep doing is kicking the can down the road. And I think this is one of those places where people have to realize that the dark side has very powerful forces to keep postponing this problem off and postponing this problem off. But, you know, the European Union was a terrible idea. Eventually it has to break up. They can't have a political union. They can't have a monetary union for the same reason that people in Wyoming don't want to be governed by the laws of New Jersey. It's a culturally different place that requires the United States has done something very unique to bring 50 little countries under a single government and a single currency standard. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. But I'll tell you very honestly, I'm much less worried about the crisis being triggered by the Europeans than I am being triggered by a food crisis. I mean, this problem with dry grains and low crop yields this year is not just a U.S. problem. It's all around the world. And if we have half the food production in grains that we had last year, we're going to have a lot of starvation. We're going to have a lot of revolution. There is a metric that once a country gets to the point where it takes 40% of the average person's take-home pay to be able to feed their a family of four, that's when, you know, a political unrest starts to happen. We're not too far away from that in the U.S. now, and I think higher food prices are much more dangerous than whatever bribery the Europeans are going to do to pretend they're still solvent.
Well, and that is factual. I mean, if we looked at you know, the cost of living in the so-called Arab Spring nations, where, you know, it got bloody, it was in direct proportion to what percentage these folks were spending. You know, they're spending 50, 60, 70% of what they can make just to put food on the table. That is the ultimate motivator. You know, hunger. Everybody's 9 meals away from really being ready to go march on whoever to get some resolution to that problem.
Well, funny. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, all 7 billion of us have one thing in common. We all aspire to eat 3 times a day. And in a world where the average farmer is 61 years old, in 10 years, they're all going to be retired or dead. If we don't start to get young people into farming and we don't figure out new ways to produce food, we're going to have 1 million people a week that are going to be starving to death in the 2020s. And if we have much higher food prices, we're going to start to make a down payment on that later this year.
No doubt. Doug, go ahead.
Well, I would suggest this, if there's any of those New World Order types that are actually listening. Look, guys, if you want to perpetrate your little scam for another 100 years, here's what you do. Just start wholesale debt forgiveness around the world and pretend like your fake currencies are still worth something. It'll work for another 100 years. They just have to eliminate the debt. It's either going to get defaulted on or they can wipe it out. If they wipe it out, then they're still in control. If we wipe it out by default, then they're no longer in control.
Great point. They're not going to do it, though. Let me tell you what they're going to. Let me tell you. This is what I think we see play out still this year. We are going to see a crack up in the Eurozone. I know $1 billion of sovereign debt write-down can collapse a New York company because I saw it happen with MF Global. So if we start talking in some of these bigger countries, Italy, Spain, where we see sovereign debt loads that are, multiples larger than what we saw in Greece, you're a minute away, you're a millisecond away, you're a computer trade away from having a literal debt freeze, or credit freeze rather, which produces chaos around the world. 2008 on steroids. Guys, I want to give you each one last comment. Go ahead, Woody, and then we'll go to Doug.
Well, I think the biggest bottom line comment I would give to anybody about all these subjects is the chances we'll solve any of them with a political solution like the election of Ron Paul, something like that, and ending the Federal Reserve. That's not even a 1 in 1,000 chance to me.
I agree.
We're going to solve this problem with a collapse. None of us really know when the collapse will occur or what the trigger will be, which means the only rational thing that's going to matter when that collapse occurs is, are you ready? And people should start to get their lives ready and prepared